I talk to a spirit. She comes in my dreams.
What is the path to awakening supposed to look like, to feel like? How do you know if you are on it? We ask these very sacred and sometimes vulnerable questions to many different women from all walks of life. A conversation that needs to be shared and heard. I'm Jo Hendy.
I'm Amanda Parker.
And welcome to the Girl Awakening podcast.
Good morning, Amanda.
Good morning, Jo.
I'm excited about this one today.
Yes, it's a guest we've had the pleasure of sitting with before.
I haven't.
Well, no, it was your fault though.
I'm very lucky. Yeah, I was away, so I'm getting to sit with her today, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, and we're moving into an area that I think a lot of people are very curious about, but don't necessarily know how to explore. So,
Yes. This is what, and you know what I've been reading a lot about too, is there's so many people out there with a fear of dying.
Yes.
And I find it so exciting. Not that I want to die, like in the right way. I want to live this life fully. I want to be here and be present and experience it all. But I'm also so excited to find out what the truth is about. I have so many questions that I'm still, I feel like I know the answers to, but I actually won't and none of us will until we pass.
Well, you just gave away really literally kind of the direction that we're going to go in today with our guests. And two, I just had a vision of Jo sitting at the gates for 3 hours or no time, however long it takes for her questions before she comes in. So I'll just say, come in, sit down.
I have so many questions for this beautiful lady today.
Yeah. So welcome, Toni.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited also about this topic. So I'm excited for our conversation today.
Absolutely.
Our listeners will be too. I can feel it. Yeah,
we're just going to do a little introduction to our listeners so that they know a little bit more about Toni, who has been on our podcast before and just so generously and so humbly shared her awakening journey with us. If you haven't already listened to that, people go back and check it out, because Toni shared a lot around what it means to be in this space of service to humanity, and sometimes how much you actually give up of yourself to be here doing what is calling you. So I just wanted to, it was very special. Yeah. So Toni, Dr. Toni Reilly is Australia's foremost past life, reincarnation and afterlife specialist. She is author of the best-selling book, Awake, The Purpose of Life and Why You Are Here. As founder of Toni Reilly Institute, she developed SoulLife Psychology over 2 decades of guiding thousands of clients and students to remember their past lives, visit loved ones in the afterlife, and travel in between lives for therapy and personal development. Dr. Toni's Doctorate of Divinity, beautiful, mission is to train practitioners in SoulLife Psychology to support people where they're at. Their call to action is self-awareness is the ultimate activism. Self-work makes life work.
Oh, I can see
that's such a nice introduction. Thank you.
Beautiful,
yeah.
Oh, gee. So, the topic of, well, I'm not sure where we want to go, but we're just talking about death. And I feel like it's the time. I think people are ready, and we're kind of devolving, but evolving back to the days when we probably first came down as humans, and it was not a feared thing. It was as much a part of life as life is, as birth. So that's what I feel like is happening. So I've noticed it's been a conversation for some years now, a big conversation, but in the work that I do, I've got a tear running down my arm. But within the work that I do, it's been looking at it from, I guess, a higher perspective and detaching a little bit from the grief that goes with losing somebody that we love, because there'll always be that element, because as a spirit leaves and they go home, is what I call it, they're still there, but they're there in such a different way that we have to adapt, or we have to train ourselves and learn how to communicate with them the way that they can communicate with us now. That's it's just an exciting time, I feel like, in humanity, where people are asking questions about it now, and maybe wanting to not be so bowled over by it.
Also, the word that keeps coming up for me too is connection. You know, connection in all realms, not just this physical realm.
Yeah.
When, you know, there is a huge belief that when someone dies, that they're gone.
Yeah.
And you know, and I know how hard it is to understand that or to believe in that.
Yeah.
And you know that I always I actually heard someone say, just imagine them in another room right next to you, and you're just yelling out, you're yelling a bit louder to them and they can hear you. You just can't see them. They're just in a different room.
It's certainly like that. It's certainly like that. And I think that we can talk to them at any time. We can think, we can yell in our heads. But I feel like a lot of people, maybe because the energy's changed, I think a lot of people can actually feel them now and sense it more strongly than ever before. So, or before people did as well, but they didn't talk about it. They didn't say. So, but now the conversation seems to be a lot more open. And I always found, even over these last at least 20 years, if you raise the topic with people who are not into this per se, they'll always have a story. They always do. And it's almost like a relief. And they always often say, I've never said that before. I never told anyone that before. So it's really, it's a special place to work, I feel. Yeah.
It's definitely a very special place. And I think you shared previously like a sentence that dropped powerfully for a lot of us, where you described grief as a pivot point. And I think there's a lot of value in embracing grief or loss or death in the way that you're sharing from a higher.
I'm covered in truth bumps, I call them. But it's like I think it's the first time for a lot of people that they start to question, why am I here? Why did this happen to me? And when people start to ask themselves those questions, it's like it's the beginning of self-awareness, really, because you start to wonder more deeply about things that happen and who you are and why you're where you're at. So it really is a gateway to wisdom. That's what I call it, because I feel like grief, it's such a process. And I also think for the first time, people who are in grief, they know implicitly that you don't choose those emotions. So if there were any thoughts of depression, just get over it, which was a whole big thing in my generation. And it's like, no one chooses it. They're not choosing to feel like that each day. It's something that comes over. And if we can, as people, just move through it and not try and make it go quicker or feel like there's something wrong with us, then I think it makes the process a lot more bearable. Yeah.
I just want to take a little different cut in this and just move away from the death part of the being and maybe, I don't know where, I'm just going to say it, around, you know, choosing to come here and having an understanding of why we chose to come to this planet and have this experience. And then also the people, I've been having more awareness around the people that are very close to me, and they may be playing out something in the negative, but I've been seeing, okay, this is a being or a soul that's come here and has chosen this experience, but not only themselves, but for me as well, because I'm deeply connected.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts and feelings around that?
Well, from my observations, I have to say it. I always say it. It really riles some people up, but from my observations, everything is planned. From every thought we have, every choice we make, every person we come into contact with, that's all purposeful and it's planned, so it's predestined.
Yeah.
And because of that, if you realize that, I think some people feel like it brings an apathy, or that you don't pay for things that you do in a negative way, but it doesn't do that at all. It actually makes you more at peace with things that happen that maybe aren't ideal, or they rattle you for a while. Then you can realize that there is something greater, a greater purpose to this. There's a greater purpose why my child is suffering or been through this ordeal. And that's what I think comes to people when they realize that this life, every life, it has been planned, just as it has been for all of the people we interact with in it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, mate. So in that space, because I mean that instantly takes you into a place of what we dropped around radical responsibility,
Yeah,
accepting, you know, your day-to-day life experiences and the part that you play in those, whether you're the perpetrator or the victim, or you know, any of those in between spaces. But what I'm also hearing when you're saying that is, it just popped into my mind was, do you feel at this time and place on the planet, there's a lot of people who have come with some very specific blueprints around what they're wanting to get moving?
I'm sure of it. I'm absolutely sure of it. And I think what would happen in, I'll say our space, because we're hyper involved in it, then you always find yourself coming across people who really either know how it's working, so they're I guess they're more invested in it, and then we'll have our people on the peripheral who may be a little bit invested, but they might also have some extraordinary wisdom to help us along our way. So yes, I'm sure that it's all part of the plan and the connections that are made this time to be in. I really feel like we're in a bridging time where we're bridging the old ways with the new. So we already have our young people since 2000 born with the extreme natural inherent connection. They all have that. And whereas we have this default to logic, and that's what we're bridging. So it's a really important time for us and for everyone around.
it's so beautiful that you've just said that, because we both have well, you're both in 2000s, aren't they?
2003 and 2004.
Yeah, see, I've got one, and
So yeah,
one in
2002. So
yeah, one 2003 and one 1998. And the way that they're handling life, they're both very aware, is very different.
Yeah.
You just saying that, I'm like, oh, that's so interesting. You know, one handles it a lot easier than the other. But I wanted to touch on that too, that what you just said about
I'm going to play that over again a few times, actually. I feel like that is a little massive truth bumps for a lot of people, what you just shared around the bridging. I think that's quite a beautiful perspective for a lot of people just to actually sit with and recognize in their way in their relationships, you know.
Yeah, for
Instead
sure.
of to be doing what they're, you know, what they're bringing through, and what you shared before, Joe, around, you know, how the people that we're close to are
playing out roles. That's what I like.
It's very powerful, and it's very real, and it deserves a lot of what's the word? I want to say respect, but I mean more than that. A lot of reverence. It deserves a lot of reverence.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Even if it's not very pleasant.
Yeah.
But there is beautifulness in it, as well.
Which is still on that subject. It's because it can be tricky. I mean, you can relate this even to death or grief. How do you navigate through that with still having and holding on to your awareness, not dropping the ball when it comes to the radical responsibility? Be loving and there for them, but also there's this strong thread of emotion and attachment. And how do we navigate through both of those without dropping any balls. You know, it's like, it almost feels like a juggling.
Sorry, I also want to say, for me, what you say with juggling, dropping any balls is giving our power away.
Yeah,
in the situation,
absolutely.
neither party or neither person.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe the first thing is not to ever think that you're dropping a ball, because one thing for sure is that everything that we do and all of our interactions with anyone, but if we're just talking about with our children, is we have to realize that all of those interactions are part of their growth, part of their assimilation into what's happening now and what will happen in the future. And it's just as it is for ours. It's pretty bloody confronting when you realize that, well, basically at some point there will definitely be, that's my daughter that works with me. I told her I was on an interview. Anyway, there'll be a point where, now I lost my train of thought.
Dropping the balls, yes. And I think
dropping the ball. So we're never actually dropping the ball. Oh, I know what I was going to say. I was going to say it was very confronting to realize that you actually going to some extent, do we swear on this podcast?
Yes. Fuck yeah.
To some extent, we're going to fuck them up.
Yeah.
And somehow, some way, it's part of how they will grow into who they become. And same with us, it's reaching acceptance of the way that this all works and what's all going on. So I think that realistically, we can't be loving all the time. We will definitely be that when we go back, when we come out of our body, but certainly life is to be messy in some ways, and it's to have an emotional interaction. So it's never always going to be rosy. And I think often the times where we disagree or we have confrontations, they're the times that we grow the most, or our bonds get stronger because we understand each other's vulnerabilities, particularly if you have the capacity to actually understand them and talk about them. I think that's the most beautiful thing with the younger generation, is they inherently seem to be able to have those chats and think and really talk on a level that's so emotionally mature.
Yeah.
So emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
It is
intelligent. Yeah.
incredible. And their awareness, their self-awareness, blows my mind and cracks my heart open, really, just to it's what you said before about the bridging, when just in this one, what we're talking about in this space. If I feel looking to myself at the same age, there was no way I had the emotional intelligence or the self-awareness that they have at the same age or even earlier. Like they're just, they're different souls here for different experiences. So purposeful, I feel, even though they're in their own growth and alignment and everything, it's just like, they're on that other side of the bridge that walking us home.
Extraordinary.
I'm noticing that they're able to hold, for me anyway, personally, they're able to hold me. Like they can hold, like I know for my daughter, she can hold a space for me and for me to get out of the way. But also she's very vulnerable when needed. You know, it's a beautiful balance of the two. It's like, that's so inspiring. It's
I have to agree with my kids were born just before the 2000s, 3 of them, but they're all water signs, so they're really in tune. But man, those kids, they call me out.
Yes.
They can see, and it's really, I find it super inspiring and but it still has me in awe. It's like, what? Yeah. Because I was thinking at your age, I didn't know any of this stuff. Yeah.
Well, on that note, one of your daughters works with you. Is that correct?
Yes. My younger daughter, Coco, who's about to be 25. Can't believe that. But anyway, she was born in 99.
Yes.
And I have one born in 97 and one in 96. But yes, Coco works with me and she's just phenomenal. And it's like, wow. Even when we're working through all of our programs and processes and I've bambled something out, she comes in and simplifies it.
Yeah.
Into something that's actually palatable and that people can probably really comprehend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to touch on to something you said before, because it reminded me of Abraham Hicks. So Esther Hicks, the very first interview that I ever watched of them about 20 years ago, where they asked the question, what do you miss about living on planet Earth? And they said the contrast. And that reminded me of what you just said then about the feeling, and they asked why. And he said, back, on the other, in a galaxy far, far away, there's no contrast. There's only love and light. That's all we feel. And I really hit home to me, because I was like, huh? They don't feel anything. Well, they do, but it's not what we have, the experience that we have here. And he said, I would die to come back and spend a day on Earth just to feel the contrast that we get to feel. And I was like, that's so interesting, because here we are fighting our way through all these feelings and sometimes hating them. Yeah. And he was all about, no, you need to experience them all and just enjoy it while you can.
Ooh, Joe, and that actually is my overall caveat for the purpose of life. It's like we are coming here to experience emotions. And I know back in the day they were all talking about thought and how we can control our thoughts and our mindset, but actually every single moment we're feeling something. It doesn't matter what. Are we feeling peaceful? Are we feeling annoyed? Are we feeling stressed? Whatever it is, there's always an emotion invoked. So it's definitely the purpose of the ultimate purpose of why we're here, or why humanity exists.
Well, apparently we're the only planet that actually experiences contrast. So that in itself, if we really understood the meaning of that, it's so fucking amazing. Like, we get to have a whole plethora of these feelings, that no other planet has. It's like, oh.
Yes, it's wonderful if you lean into it and just accept the feelings as they come. I guess always the negative ones get a bad rap, but it's like, well, we're supposed to feel them too, so that we understand the contrast.
And they we tend to linger in the bad ones longer than we do the joyful ones, I guess, or the positive ones. And thank you for giving us all permission to have a bit more messiness. So I want to ask, when we're talking around, even going back to the ages and things in that bridge, over the thousands of people that you've worked with in this space of regression and afterlife, have you noticed a change in like what people are coming to you for? Like, is it like, because I know as a practitioner, you get a cluster of people coming for certain things, and is it a similar thing for you over these decades that you've been working in the area?
100%. So in the beginning, so roughly 20 years ago, they would come for things like, well, I guess everyday things. It might be anxiety, or it might be phobias, very, very human things that they might fear, or that were weird or whatever, but they would come with a purpose to heal something specific. Maybe the relationship's not going well, or maybe it's going really well. They want to delve into that. So it was always, I guess, with a symptom of sorts, always with a symptom. And what it allowed me to do, back to me, I feel like all of these stages that happened were for me to develop what came to pass. So initially it was really about, I guess, observing what people have here on the planet, what troubles us. And of course, from that, I came to realize that there's not that many things, that we're all going to be bothered by certain few things at certain stages. So that was one big thing I noted. And because of that, also the people that came, I of course realized that men are as vulnerable as women. So for me, it was all about people are just people, and we're all here with a heart and a big feeling. So there was all of that. And then over time, initially it was very much people always going into a past life. And I think it was not only for me to explore it and understand it fully, but for them to more easily understand what was happening for them now, because when you're in that sort of past life space, you're looking from a higher perspective and you're a little bit detached from it actually. And then you can still recognize that's how I feel now. And it helps them to make the assimilation as to why it's happening now. So that was a beautiful thing. It happened for a long time that the cases or the clients would come with those types of sessions. But then what happened is it started to go to between lives. Maybe even before that. No, between lives, I had a real run of them. And the way that I would describe the between life space is, it's not even really, it's just another energy, but it's much like what people describe when they describe having an NDE, but it's facilitated. Yeah. So, but that's where they're going into this space where you get to feel that immense energy of love and acceptance. And it's beyond love and acceptance, can I say? It's just feels like everything but nothing, and it's magical. And everyone describes the same thing. So, and no one ever wants to come back, but of course we have to come back. They're like, everyone gets sent back from there. That was really cool thing that I noticed. It's like, instead of you even facilitating it, they're sent back, and they come back and they open their eyes and be like, I have to come back now.
Wow, that's wild. That's very cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. Now, I've had a couple of psychedelic experiences where it actually, I can relate to what you're saying. Yeah. Where I've gone somewhere else where it's been, I've never felt love like I felt in a nothingness space where it's like there's nothing there. Why do I feel so much love? You know, and not wanting to come back. You know, but coming out. And having that experience and coming out and going, oh, okay, now I know why I had that experience.
Yeah,
because that's available.
I love that you mentioned the psychedelics, because I became obsessed, if you like, with, is this the same thing that we can facilitate? And so I wanted to try. I had to try for myself. Like, I need to try this. So I've tried a few times now. And each time something different happened. In fact, the first time a close colleague of mine also wanted to do it. And she had probably her big awakening where she had the most beautiful experience and was reminded, I think, we're reminded of where we're from and how it all works, and that there's purpose down here. And certainly in my observation and in my own experience, it was beautiful every time. And I think I'm really happy to see that they use that now, and it's coming into therapy. Yeah. Because it's like, wow, it's very natural, but really they're just reconnecting with themselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've had like past life regressions as well, and I find that's for me is the same thing. Like the no matter what reason that I'm having the regression for, when I'm in that space, it's very much a beautiful space, and a very forgiving space, and a very, expansive space as well. And I think it enables what you just did earlier and giving us permission to experience all our emotions.
Yeah.
Regression for me has been like that as well, where it's given me permission to be all of my wholeness, and it's
absolutely
felt beautiful. Even if it's whatever reason it was that I was going there for was not quite so beautiful.
Yeah, I think what happens is the soul takes over and gives you what you actually need. Because people come along like, I want to deal with this, I'm going to ask about that, and it's like, oh no, you're not, you're going to get this instead. Yeah. It's really special. The other thing that used to happen or started to happen was people would come for past life regression, but what would happen is their passed over person would come in and visit them.
Oh, we're back. Yeah. Pass over person.
So it's one of their loved ones who's passed, and they never told me that.
But yes, I did.
I did. I was like, is this another version of us?
No, someone that they knew here.
Yes.
And they'll say it during the session, oh, well, my dad's here or my mom's here or whomever it is. And it's like, so that I had a real run of that happening as well. So without intentionally facilitating it, so I got to observe that it was possible to facilitate it for people who are in grief, I guess, or just wondering what's going on. Is there anything else? Is there something more? Is my person okay? And so in that regard, we got this other real beautiful process to incorporate into everyday psychology or everyday healing. So that was really another extraordinary thing that came from the observation.
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. So Dolores Cannon, I suppose, is that where you are trained in, the QHHT, or is it something different?
No, not QHHT. I've barely even read her stuff actually, but of course I know who she is. But my training was initially with a lady who told me she learned from a Maori healer.
Oh, wow.
That's my initial training. And then, so it's a really gentle process. It's basically you're guiding someone into meditation so that they're receptive. The humanness is slowed down a bit. But following that, I went to train with Dr. Brian Weiss in the States. He's the author of Many Lives, Many Masters, which was my catalyst for change in this life, actually. So I went to train with him. And what I discovered, I just adore that man. What I discovered was he wasn't gatekeeping anything. He was fully aware that anybody can have this experience, and it does feel magical, but it's like, it's not for a few. Everybody can have it. And I guess really the only thing that stops us is getting our logic at bay and just getting ourselves relaxed. So that's what I adored about him and his teachings. So, and it was wonderful. It was wonderful to be around his energy. So there was that. And then most of it has come from literal anecdotal observation and practice, and having real people, be vulnerable and share their life story, share their biggest fears, and reveal themselves to you. And that was just the biggest gift of all, in being able to document, I guess, a therapy. It doesn't even have to be called a therapy, but documenting ways to help people navigate life with a bit more ease.
I think that's really beautiful too. Just hearing what you're saying too is that, we are all so unique. And I think you and going and spending that time with Brian Weiss, and then bringing that back, and then you sitting with all these people, that you're expanding and creating your own unique gift for the world that's not like anyone else's. And this is what I love. The more awareness that and the more space that we can hold for others, the more we expand and learn more about our own gifts and how we can then shape that, give back, which is what I think we're here to do. Yeah.
Absolutely what we're here to do. And I guess one of the biggest things that maybe knocks people for six, potentially sets off the grieving process actually without a death, is when you come to terms with your identity and maybe realize how much you lose it, because it does happen to all of us. Maybe not the 2000s so much, they're doing things the opposite way, but for us before then, we kind of lost ourselves. We were meant to do that, but you come in as this innocent baby, and then you have to blend into society. And, well, it starts with our parents or whoever raises us, that we're trying to survive and blend in without making too much trouble for ourselves or feeling too triggered. So we develop these ways to exist. And then later, I know this is what happened for me, and I think it's basically what happened to a lot of our generations, was you suddenly realise that, oh, fuck, all of this happened, but before you're responsible, you're blaming, and you're thinking that everything is the reason why things happen to you. And it's like, oh, it wasn't like that at all. And when that reality hits home, it can be, I think, maybe they call it dark night of the soul. I think it can trigger that, where you realize, oh, all this shit, I did it to myself in some ways.
Yeah.
Just with the way our perspective was before it changes.
Yeah, sorry. I just had something in my ear.
A little insect. That's the ultimate irony, isn't it? And I think for me, is as a concept and a reality, is one of the deepest grief points. Really is, a lifetime lost, just looping around in things because you think you're right about something.
Oh,
yeah.
Thank you.
Isn't it beautiful to realize actually how much we change? And I've spoken to this about people like us who are very much into the awareness space, but people who are not, they still change, because the journey of life on earth is something that we're meant to experience, and we will all, to some extent, evolve through. And I suppose in everyday terms, we would see it as how much calmer a grandmother is, generally speaking, than we were as a mother. Or you can see that we change, or things that bothered us so much before, you can feel how much they don't matter anymore.
Yeah, no, that's
beautiful.
So true. So true. And it's funny, I think it's sometimes, and not that I want to make it any harder or easier or whatever, but for our age group, it's tough. It's,
you mean
yeah. Like even just talking about, growing up with your parents and the word identity is so powerful right now, because we have a lot of people out there that are identifying with a story. They need to have a story.
Yeah.
To make them feel relevant. And it's like, no, we need to let go of the story and create a new one, or not even create a story. It's just like allow yourself to be free in the space to write a new one if you want to, and it doesn't mean because this is what I struggled with a few years back, was when I started to wake up, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, when you start to wake up, you disown people around you, because you're like, oh, I just don't fit in with that, or I don't do this anymore. And the funny part is coming full circle and realizing waking up is including everybody, but you have to be the one that's
accepting of them
and loving and caring and responsible and aware, and all of those things you have to be for those people.
Yeah.
And it's just so interesting, this whole identity, story, relevance. There's such an anchor into not evolving.
Absolutely. I think, though, one of the real other things that I've learned through all this observation is we don't get out of the process. So once you know, and then hindsight's our great friend.
Yeah.
But until one lives through the process, you don't get to control that. Oh yeah, I feel good about this now, I forgive this person, I forgive myself, all of that stuff. It's like you just don't get to choose it, because that's our mind thinking we've got control of it. And then of course people be mean to themselves because they can't do what they think they should do. So it's like, just let yourself go through the process and arrive at the awareness.
I something just recently that when you girls just sharing then gave me a different meaning to it. It was nothing makes me, the person was saying, nothing makes me sadder than seeing people being in the same behaviors for years after, many years. And I was like, yeah, it is sad to kind of not ever, because growth is what we're here for, and expansion is what we're here for, is what she was sharing in that context. But then if you look at it from the point of view of actually, if I'm changing and I'm evolving and expanding and growing more and how I'm experiencing my life and what I'm here for, why am I not thanking them for their service to me, for being the way that they are choosing to be, whether I see it as the same or actually maybe I'm just seeing them the same because that's my filter.
Yeah.
they're not necessarily the same. Maybe I'm not asking them different questions or interacting with them in a different way for them to show me that they have actually changed a little bit.
Yeah.
There's like a continual folding in and spiraling out. It's wild, isn't it, when you just kind of keep giving yourself permission to not judge, but observation and question. Yeah.
Observation. It's the key. And I think you said the word just a moment ago. I think that here on our journey through life, the ultimate, you used to talk about enlightenment all the time. And I remember in my early days, because I was never into that, came out of very mainstream, and I'm like, what? And I thought, not too far into it, I thought, that's at home. We've got that at home. Here's for reaching acceptance. And I think that is the most powerful landing that we have, when we're accepting of ourselves and then of others. It's really the ultimate. It gives us this newfound empathy and tolerance of really everything that's going on, everyone around us. And I guess then we get this calm, this inner calm. Yeah.
Wow. It's beautiful.
I love the way that you called home.
Home. Yeah.
Yeah, and and that word enlightenment carries such a lot of meanings, isn't it? It's a big one, but yeah, as you say, like, again, it pulls you back into the space where you don't have to be an angel and on earth, not do it. There's no harm. It's not about that. It is, but we can't put that pressure of ourselves of trying to be perfect.
Yes.
Feel or not express or not show how something really affects us.
Yes.
Acceptance is quite as you said, the peaceful, calm point where we can come back to anchor every now and again as we go often.
Absolutely. It's I know for me sometimes I think I'm in a certain space, and then it's like,
Yeah.
we just test you again, see how you're doing with that.
Wow.
Yeah, and I guess what happens with most people is it's just, it still happens, but you kind of you recover quicker.
Yeah.
But yeah, just life.
Yeah. I think the waxer quicker and
Recovery gets
lighter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, you recognize the whack, because instead of going, I've been taken out by it and or grieving that you've been whacked again. It's like, oh, okay, I've got to learn something again. I must be going to grow again,
I wanted just to have a chat on this word blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
I love this word, and I always say to my husband, part of the reasons why I'm looking forward to crossing over, because I've heard so many people through the NDEs and other through Dolores Cannon things that I've watched talk about that they get to go into this room once you pass over, and you go, and I always imagine them to roll out this massive map of like a life blueprint, and they say, okay, this is why you met this person here, but you didn't listen to them, and they were telling you something, and instead you went this way, and then that happened. Like, that's my view of what a blueprint looks like. What is your understanding of a blueprint? Or is there such a thing? Or do you believe that such a thing? Has it come up in any of the past life regressions?
What a great question. I'm so excited to go here. Okay, so I think, no, not I think. I always just say these are my findings. When we return home, there's none of this. So even these experiences we have in an NDE or in a past life regression, it's all for the human experience. So as a human, we need to relate. So then we can relate to thinking that, well, there's a blueprint, there's a plan, and when we go home, this is going to happen. So it's for our human experience and for us to comprehend. But actually, when we leave our body, we're straight back to that extraordinary energy of everything but nothing. So the blueprints, while we might have that experience, even in a facilitated thing, and I think it comes down to the individual as well, if it's what they need at that stage in or that trajectory of their life, then they will be presented with that kind of information, or, you know, finding out who their soul group is and all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's very, I guess it's very individual, and perhaps not everyone will even have one of those experiences, but it's definitely for the human experience, all of it. Even the fact that we need to connect with our loved ones over there, it's for our human experience.
So it's all relevant. Like it's
all relevant.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I love what you've just said. That's so beautiful. So in other words, it's just another beautiful, loving way that our higher self is saying, you know, I've got you. I'm going to give you what you need right now to keep you moving ahead, even though it may not be real. You know, in another space, it may not be real, but I'm going to let you, this is what I'm going to show you right now just to support you on your journey.
Absolutely. And those transcendent experiences that we have, whether it's in a dream or an NDE or it's facilitated, they change us. They literally change us, because you come into contact with this energy that's, you just don't feel it in everyday life.
Yeah.
So it certainly changes us in whatever stage we're at in our life. It's magical.
I don't think I've ever heard, and I've listened to, believe me, hundreds of, I don't think I've ever heard one that said, and I hated it, and I just don't ever, like I've never heard that. I've always just heard it changed my life.
Yes.
And it's just interesting now, thinking through a different lens now, that everything that they received was what they needed to get them probably back on track, you know, because most of the time it's been because they've been off track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, Jo, to that, one of the other things that with the blueprint of what we're doing down here is people always think when things get shitty in their life that they're off track. They're never off track. We're never, ever off track. But it's, I think we have to justify to ourselves that we did something wrong. I did something wrong. I made the wrong choice and I ended up here, but it was terrible there. I've got to get back. But it's like, you're meant to go there. We're meant to go there. It's part of the experience. It's part of our growth. And we, of course, will come back from it and realize that it was part of the path.
Yeah.
But I think in the moment, probably before we really feel responsible for ourselves or feel aware, then we'll be saying, you know, gone off path. It's just being mean to yourself, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you personally go? You've got 4 kids, is that correct?
3.
When you see one of your children doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing, and please, you don't have to answer this if you don't.
I'm going to answer.
Let's do it in hindsight, or in
One of your
theory.
clients.
Do you suggest something? Do you not suggest? Well, this is my battle at the moment, because
we're having a therapy session with you now, Toni.
I'm loving it. Oh, perfect. But I am going through the layers of trusting at the moment, and there's many layers, as a parent, as a sister, as a mother, all of those things, as a wife, where, you know, when do you shut up? And when is it the right time? And is there a right time? Should we be, or should we just be allowing them, if there's a plan, should we just be allowing it? Like, this is where my confusion comes in. And yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Okay, so if we talk about my kids and my observations, of course, I've got friends with kids and a lot of clients who've got kids and all of that. But I feel like I might be a bit unique in that, and maybe Amanda is too. We're Aquarius.
Yes.
And it's said that we, as an Aquarian, are quite independent parents, or we parent in that manner. But I feel like with my kids, I always was, I guess when they were little, I became aware of this. And the reason that I got into it was because I was aware that I could fuck those kids up, because they were so different to me. I at least knew that water signs were emotional, and I was very Aquarian back then, not very emotional. So I thought, I need to be careful what I'm doing with these kids. I still made many mistakes, but what I did with them was, and even now, of course, because they're adults and they're in relationships and all sorts of things go on, I think to a degree they're indoctrinated. I mean that in a really good way, but they've heard me talking the way that I talk, or we're big grab the dictionary people, the metaphysical dictionary. Go and see why that happened, or why is that happening. So they all got a dictionary, and they'll look at, or they'll talk together, and one of them will get the dictionary and read it to the other. But God, Joe, I don't get it perfect all the time. I don't. My girls are probably far less. I didn't actually feel like I had challenges with them. They were really smooth. But my boy, he does the trust thing actually. We've done that together. But he's a kind of person that needs someone to say, and me most likely to say, that was really shit.
Yeah.
Just get into it with them and let them download and give them support. But I usually pop into, well, this is why that person did that.
Yeah.
And it's shitty for him, because he's like, that's not what he needs to hear in that moment. So just trust what you're doing with your kids.
Yeah.
And because it will all be part of how things come about. But I think a big thing is sitting back and allowing them to go through their journey as well, and realizing that you can't actually control it all, because they do have to have their own experiences.
Oh, I love what you've said, because, you know, in my naivety as a parent, because there's 4 children, there's 2 bonus children, and then two of our own, and they're all beautiful kids. So the 2 younger ones has just, you know, we have conversations now where they say to us, your parenting was completely different to anyone else's. And I'm like, really? And they're like, Mom, are you kidding? We did this, and these people were doing this. And I'm like, in my world, in my inner sanctum world, I didn't even think that our parenting was different, but it was completely different. But I love what you're saying. Just trust that you've done the right job. And I believe that we have. I believe, you know, in my heart that we've done everything to allow them the space to be who they are, you know, without controlling them too much. But there are aspects that we know that we're unaware of that we're doing. And sometimes we do fuck up, and sometimes we say and do the wrong things in front of them. And, you know, our kids are like sponges, and there's probably many moments that I can't even remember that have shaped them in a way that, you know, maybe was wrong, but perfect at the same time.
I think one of the biggest mentors that I had in my life, she was so influential on me. She passed away in 2018, actually, but she went home. But there were a few things she said to me, and one of them was, there's no should or shouldn't, and there's no right or wrong. And that's not to say go around fucking people over, or our kids, or anyone, but it's just like what we did was probably what we were always going to do.
Yeah.
And the way that we operate together. So there's no should or shouldn't. And I guess that comes back to also if people in new relationships, our kids, for example, and they're saying, Mom, should I do this? Should I make the call? Should I not text? And it's like, there's no should or shouldn't. If you want to, do it.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah.
What I'm hearing too is because, 5 people can see an incident, and each of those 5 people will recollect it completely different to the other.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing
Exactly.
is the success point, if you want to put it as that, is the way that the 5 people can communicate, and as you say, go in together to be able to share their experience of that incident.
Yeah.
So many times, like one of my children says to me about smacking them with the wooden spoon, and I'm like, I never, ever, ever did that.
So
I had a wooden spoon, and it was used for pasta. I put it on your butt. But for some reason, and it's a part of their journey around what they're carrying in themselves around.
And the view they had.
of certain things. And it's funny how every now and again that will come up in a conversation where it's like, well, I just want to show you that you did this to me.
And I'm like, I didn't
But yeah, you got to laugh about it. But
Yeah.
it's the communication for me. Like, communication is just one of the power points in anything, and it's having those opportunities to share, no matter what the emotion is.
Yeah.
Not walking out without the communication to get to a point where everybody can breathe in the same space and feel what they're feeling. You know, like, that's just, for me, that's the biggest heart space. It's sexy. It's
Beautiful.
catalyst. It's everything. You know, it's love at its ultimate.
It's real love, isn't it? It's probably also, it's true intimacy as well, when you can get to that depth with certain people. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And the other thing that I get with that too is around the space thing. You know, as soon as I go into any type of having to say something or do anything, actually, just even doing, I'm closing down the space. You know, as I think it's just what you were saying. You know, it's just love. You just have to love them for wherever they're at, and allow the space to expand for them to then be able to go, oh shit, probably shouldn't have done that, or
they get to self-reflect.
Yeah.
And some people, with the life mission they've come to do, they only learn that way.
Yeah.
So if we're oppressing that because of our own fear, or we know what's going to happen, then you just don't give them that opportunity to discover for themselves.
We're probably extending the experience for them.
Yeah, what's always part of it.
Speaking of, so going like, because I was questioning in my mind then, I'm wondering what the 2000s how they're gonna relate to, you know, past life, you know, all this kind of area that I feel for our generation is such a powerful therapy and way of understanding, you know, our growth and purpose and connecting into, and I guess that reflects back to what you were sharing before. It's all relevant, and it's being shown to us in a ways that we need, so for our growth.
Yes.
But how that overlays with these young children, and I just feel like there's just going to be like these, you know, the holographic kind of, they'll sit down and go, I just need to check in, and they'll be like little.
I feel like it's probably going to get to that. Like, where you can see it in here.
Yeah.
Everything's so strong, holographic. Yeah, amazing.
So I'm going to get a little bit personal here, because just from my own personal, like, my mother passed last year, and I shared that with you, Toni. And just before she realised consciously that she was going to be passing, we did some cards together, and she pulled a card, and I was reading it to her, and halfway through she just went, oh fuck. Because literally, like, and she was quite a lady. She was not someone who swore very often, hardly ever. It was communicating to her around, she had a choice to be here and experiencing what it meant to stay here, or to go home and experience everything that she knew was possible, and have the power to do so much.
Yeah.
And it was quite a transcendent moment and a pivot point in that journey that we shared together. But it was such a beautiful opportunity to see that there is so much more that we're capable of if we don't resist what some part of us, I feel, when we're not well, has already decided that we want to do. It's the mind that's going, but no, I want to be here for this and that.
Yeah, for sure. But I think on a big picture, what you probably can understand now is that part of your experience with losing your mama is you look what you're doing now, and you can help so many other people feel better about such a traumatic thing for many. So I mean, there's beauty in all of our experiences, and I guess I know Pamela, my mentor that toddled off home 2018, much like your mum, I feel, is they're helping from, well, we can call it the other side, but they're helping from there.
Yeah.
So, and you know, we still have them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I do feel her all the time. She's very present, and often the phone will go when we're in a her phone will go in a podcast. But a friend mentioned, she said, why don't you should get a photo of your mum and put it out, you know, it's the kids' photo and things like that. And I said, well, I hadn't really thought about it, but probably why I hadn't thought about doing that is because I feel her very present all the time, and often there's some kind of communication and things.
Yeah.
I just feel her all the time. I don't feel like I need a photo of her. It's almost like she is very still really present.
Oh, I love that. I love that. I think that we will get into schools and things like that where the young people, the really young ones now, this becomes everyday experience rather than something that was probably pretty traumatic for our generations, but they just seem to be so much more in touch with, or connected, so much more connected. Yeah, just knowing.
Though it's a bit scary. I work in that area with young girls, and there is a bit of a war. If we can look at just we can step aside for a moment and be in the real human world. There's a real war at the moment on the planet around distraction and distracting these beautiful beings that are coming through. And it's a real force, and it's, you know, I love, you know, us even having these communications and going out to the wider community about really holding a space for our kids to sit in the nothingness, you know, and not having to be distracted by so many things. And even as partners, and I will open this bag of you know, the transgender or the they or them or whatever it is, or that whole movement is a distraction from, and I'm not against any of that, but it's a distraction from just being you, just being in this beautiful space. Let's just pile more confusion and distortion on our kids to stop them from really connecting in what they know is their true self. And I just think we need more people to, you know, to hold that space for them to do that and be that.
I think part of their journey, the younger people's journey compared to ours, is it's really they're ultimately they're bringing acceptance to that. That's their job. It's their mission to bring a more accepting humanity. So that's why all of these things happen, because I guess life isn't too emotional if you're not scared of something. And part of learning who you are and how you fit in, and all the gender things, all the fear around what's happening to our planet, all those things that do affect our young people, they're still just things that create an emotional experience for them, whereas for us it was different things that affected us. So I think it's really not too different. It's just more in line with what their mission is, unbeknownst to them.
Of course, yeah. Thank you. That's beautiful feedback. Yeah.
So,
and they're capable. Like, you know, that's the other thing that I've got to remember. They're completely capable.
Yeah.
So when you offer, so with the institute, so you have the clinic where, you know, you're working with people with all these spaces of past life, regression, metaphysical psychology, you call it, don't you? Is that right?
Yes.
And then you have the diploma, the doctorate of divinity. How is that? Have I got that right, or have I merged those two together? Because I just love it.
My doctorate is in divinity.
Okay.
But it's a process to award doctorates, but we will work on that within the Toni Reilly Institute. But for me, the big focus has been on creating this new psychology so that it's robust and accepted for the newer generations. But of course it works for us all. But that's the main focus for me, more than seeing people one-on-one anymore. It's to train people in this type of, we call it SoulLife Psychology. That's because we can't call ourselves a psychologist. That's one thing, because the psychologist movement doesn't allow it. But so we're essentially a practitioner, but SoulLife Psychology is what we're studying, which is essentially this marrying of life and soul. And when you kind of know that they're both there and that we're connected to our soul, then, and everyone's soul for that matter, then navigating life becomes a whole lot easier. And also, I think something with traditional psychology is, even with counselling, it can be quite misunderstood, or even the way that it works, it might not be necessarily what that person needs. But the way that we do things, it's like it's always going to be an uplifting experience. And not aside from, I think what used to happen, and maybe it's why people would reach out for readings, because it's counselling, but if you're going for a reading and you're getting some uplifting, you're getting some hope, you're getting some, maybe a little bit of direction, then that's really good. But if you go to see a psychologist, it's like, oh, I'm fucked up. And it's like, well, we kind of all are, but we're also not, because we're just living our lives and having these experiences. So I think that was what I wanted with SoulLife Psychology, is that people, you don't, it's not about being that there's something wrong with you. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's that you're living life, and we can navigate it with a bit more ease with this type of sessions.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you were talking about before, about the 5 people's viewpoints.
Yeah.
Like, it's just another viewpoint, and it's that viewpoint might unlock something in you that's going to open you wide, to move into whatever you're here to do.
Yeah.
It's like, we can never be short of viewpoints.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's where it comes back to, there's no should or shouldn't, or no right or wrong, because each person comes from their perspective. But we can tell what their perspective is going to be if you study this SoulLife Psychology. But that allows you to communicate with them in a way that they need, or in the way that works well for them, in the way that they can comprehend it. But yeah, it shocked me, actually, in the early days, realizing that my normal is not everyone else's normal, and their normal's their normal. So everyone thinks they're normal, but it's their normal. And then I guess you find people who fit into your normal, but really everyone's doing their own normal. Yeah. And nobody's wrong.
Nobody's wrong. I love that.
Yeah.
We did touch on this a little bit in your previous episode around the neurodiversity, and how really we're all neurodiverse. If you're, neural normal, you're probably not growing. But if you want to turn it around a little bit, but that brings me to ask you, like, do you find people who are like, because again, it is part of that growing and changing paradigms, as identifying neurodiversity is something that is helping us understand people, and there's a lot of reasons why this is becoming very common in society, and that's different area of discussion. But from like the SoulLife Psychology, and from like past life regression and these type of things, like there's some amazing kids who speak with God, or have very clear ideas around why we're here and what we're doing here, and other people, other beings, and things like that. Do you find, like, in the work that you are doing, Toni, would you like to share a little bit around that? Because do you find that these people and children that are have quite a lot of neurodiversity as part of their blueprint are bringing us a lot of gifts? And also, do they work easily in the space that you're working with people in, like, as opposed to people, pre 2000 to now 2000, these neurodiverse children, are they very open to past life regression or talking in these spaces? Like, That was a big one.
I feel like the young people are all's probably too broad, mostly already aware that there's more than this in our life as we see it. But the neurodiversity comes in, in some ways I feel like, because of course there's a spectrum, but in some ways I see that what it's doing is it's helping them see that they're just an individual, really. And then so they get into these conversations about, well, I do this because, there's a label there, but it's also a relief when you can be you, no matter what you means. It's like, well, I daydream, I do this, other people don't, but it's okay. It's like, because that's who you are. So I see that there's a lot of conversations opening up around that, maybe not even for the kids, for people in our generations as well, where they're like, for the first time they're at peace with, well, that's who I am now. They've got license to be who they are. And then I think there's a wider spectrum where some of them are so freaking smart and so receptive and able to give information back in a certain way. So they've each, I guess, depending where they are on that spectrum, they're giving us something back that changes the people around them. And then I guess if we go on a real wider spectrum where they might be nonverbal, for example, then without a doubt, the parents at the very least learn a different kind of communication and a different kind of tolerance. And so no matter what, how these people come back or how they appear or how we label them, it's all, I think, to permeate and create a kinder, more tolerant humanity.
Wow, that's so beautiful. I was just thinking, I've got twin grandsons and they're so funny and completely different. But I hang out with them today and tomorrow, and I just love being with them. They're so like curious, and I'm always I kind of just relinquish when I'm with them because I just let them lead, and it's so much fun. And
grandparent,
I love it.
So much fun.
I love it.
What you're saying, I'm like, they're so receptive too. You have to be so careful with what you're saying, even more than our kids. Well, I know I'm more aware of that now, but I notice now that they remember everything.
They also, even from the 2000s, they are so sensitive to the energy. So everything that's happening around them, the mood of their sister, the mood of their dad, the mood of not just that, all of the things that are going around them. And I think that's why we see massive rise in anxiety and their description of it, because they're almost like this sponge for energy, and they don't have the logical default to be able to move through it. They feel it. So, and again, on that level, it's not really a bad thing, but if it's inhibiting what they need to do in daily life or it's taking them down, then we can help them in ways to manage it. So I think one of the big things with moving forward and teaching our young people and our grandkids is to manage their energies.
Yeah.
How to manage your energy and realize, and one of the big things will be realizing, is it yours? Because sometimes it is. But most of the time, particularly for these sensitive ones, is most of the time it's probably bigger than them. So, and then you don't need to be biffed around by it. So it's like we can manage your energies and reel it back in.
Yeah.
And so it's why this sort of new type of psychology needs to be kind of out there and starting in the schools so that the kids get to understand energy from the outset.
Yeah, no, that's definitely needed. And it's also a tricky concept to take to schools when, there's a program in place. But once I'm in, I'm like, okay, here we go, girls. And they love it. They love talking about energy. They get it. They don't question. So, straight away, yep, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it?
yeah, it's really cool. I enjoy it. I also have a little granddaughter who's at the moment, are you happy, Nini? I am happy. Like she'll say to me, I am happy. And you can really feel it. You know, the word happy, it's like, oh, I just love, are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. I'm happy. So it's such a
So
beautiful
beautiful.
thing. Yeah, very simple, but very powerful.
Absolutely. Oh,
So, Toni, you offer quite a few,
Modalities.
modalities, but like you do like workshops and online calls and things like that. Like I know you were running like a free call a month
yeah.
ago, which was in the
I
afterlife space.
I think I might have just got back from overseas when we talked last time,
Mm.
but I blessed, a blessed thing is I got to pair up with Shezi Denya, who's really getting involved in this space, and she's freaking magical.
Yeah.
But part of that means there's this exposure to a new audience, which is just an absolute blessing. So as part of that, we I always, the mission was to reach mainstream. So, and you can't reach it with fluffy new age talk. So what we've reeled it back into is intuition. It's like, it's mainstream, but it's definitely the gateway to awareness. It absolutely, when you start tuning in, and most people are intuitive anyway, but when they start tuning in or developing it, there's a bit of meditation that happens and there's messages that come in. So it invokes an awareness. So with that, I've reeled it all back predominantly to intuition. And we have got free classes. Actually, the first one is on Monday. We did a night one and a day one. The first day one's on Monday. They're free, just for an hour, where we're talking about intuition and doing a few little exercises so that people know that they have it, because they all do. And then also the big thing is, you don't have to go straight to the big SoulLife Psychology, but there's an intake for that happens. It starts the end of February. So we're starting to take applications for that. And it's done online, actually. So we can do it from all over the world, join in, and it's quite a journey to go through it, because without fail, there's a whole lot of a self journey that happens as you're learning to work with other people.
That's so true. Yeah. I did a counseling course through a holistic company, and I learned so much about myself doing it. I loved it. I got so much out of it, and in the end, I was like, even if I never use it, I actually got so much from it that I would go back and do it all over again, because it was so amazing.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So I understand what you're saying. It's, you think you're going to do it for others, but you end up learning so much about yourself in the process, which is the most beautiful thing.
I think on that, Jo, one of the things that we notice, with, not really to put traditional psychology down, but with the traditional training, is nobody did any self-awareness stuff. And it's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
If you don't have some awareness of who you are, then you without a doubt will put your shit on other people.
Yeah.
And well, that'll be part of their journey as well. But but still, that was one thing that we really noted was missing in even mediumship training, and all of these wonderful things that can be incorporated in this, was there was no self-awareness invocation. So, but I feel like it's the key. I think it's the key to feeling good about who you are, for starters, and then being able to navigate helping other people with ease, so that you're actually helping them with what they need, not what we want them to need, or where we want them to be at in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it goes back to the very beginning of this podcast, is that you can't actually really teach or show anyone anything. They need to experience it.
Yes.
Feel the emotion of whatever it is, for them to be able to learn the lesson that they need.
Yeah. And we can meet them where they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
So do I.
Because on your socials you have quite a few exercises around intuition, which I think are quite fun to do. But you touch then on like the mediumship, because that is also one of your tools in your toolkit, isn't it, Toni, as a medium?
Yes. So I've been to Arthur Findlay College lots of times. It's inherent in all of us, but I guess it's just about who's actually incorporating it into their their daily life or their work. But the mediumship's really I adore mediumship. Even I know there's a whole lot of rhetoric about it and potential negativity, but it's actually the most beautiful thing to be able to do for people and to alleviate grief, to alleviate the pain that people feel when they're going through a process. So whether mediumship where you're the medium and you bring their person through and pass it on, that's traditional mediumship. But my favorite thing is to facilitate that they go visit their person themselves. And we can do that. Take them into the transcendent space and visit with your own person. And then there's no doubt for them that that their person's okay and that there's more to life and no need to fear death.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much. There's so much. I mean, there's so many areas we could go down, but we're really running out of time. We've been on for an hour and a half. That's
Really?
gone so
Wow.
quickly. So we will have to close it off, but I reckon we're going to have you on again too.
Oh, yeah, that's a
You might be our lovely, third time lady.
Yeah.
It's so speaking with you. For me, the first time, and Amanda spoke so highly of you and was so excited about you coming back on, and I now understand why. I've had my own experience with you and I understand why. But for our listeners, I'm sure they'll be super excited to find out more about what you do, which we'll put all of your information on the bottom of this podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Toni, for coming on, sharing you, which for those that are just listening to this and not looking at the video, there's a glamorous lady sitting behind us, and when she dropped the F-bomb, I was like, oh, I love her.
Yeah. She's one of us.
She's part of our tribe. Part of our tribe.
I'm going to do what I always do and just draw it out one more little minute longer. And just with the question that we usually ask in the awakening episode around, because what you've talked in today is that the world is more than this moment in time, because of by nature of our soul and who we are as energy. But our question is like, how do you see the planet? And I feel, for you, what do you see for the planet at this time? And I feel just because I feel like, again, it's just that little bit of like what you give to people in your sessions and knowing. Yeah, I just love you as a closing to share perhaps just a little bit in that space, if you don't mind.
Oh, thanks, Amanda. I love this question. How do I see the planet? I feel like what we have to do as individuals, or what's ideal for us to do, is just to bring everything back to ourselves. Is the only thing that we have really any control over. And if you can make peace with who you are and focus on your close relationships, the people who mean something to you, focus on making you feel good about you, then you can feel better about them or navigate those relationships. And I think then what's going on in the global space, it really doesn't touch us per se. So it's like focus on your inner world and what matters most to you.
Yeah. Well, what we feel on the inside then radiates out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does.
It's a really beautiful closing statement, and one that we will take with us into the day.
The little card that came up today is family.
Oh, it's family. I've got to put my glasses on. Oh, I just love it. I just love it. I feel like, family we know is more than just our blood relatives, but the people who are in that close-knit arena that we all have, or certainly most of us have. It's really special. And you know that whole, it's the simple things. It really is. It really is the simple things, and nurturing or making sure that those spaces are, you know, feel as good as they can be is a great thing. And if that means we have to meet people where they're at, then that's what we do. Allow them to be them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for being part of our family.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to our Girl Awakening podcast. We are also on YouTube as Girl Awakening. We'd love to see you there with comments on how our guests resonated with you or your own awakening. Please share the love with a like and subscribe while you're there. A blissful thank you to Ksenia Luki, the amazing artist behind our theme song. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.